All right, guys, this is Jeremy Mitchell. I'm your host of the Sales Pride podcast, and I've got a real treat for you. This is my former operations manager when I worked for Leaf Filter. His name is Devin Scarborough. He is currently working as a salesperson with Priority Roofing here, and so excited to have him on here. Devin was an operations manager at Leaf Filter from 2018 through the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, I believe. So he was there for about 5 years. 4.5, 5 years. And Devin and I, we butted heads a little bit. And, but, you know, I really, when it boils down to it, I think we have a very high level of respect for one another, even though we didn't always see eye to eye. And really, I probably was too big for my britches at times, but I respect him a lot. And that's why I'm bringing him on here as a guest. So, Devin, thank you very much for joining us here.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So walk me through, because I know when you got started with Leaf Filter, you kind of had a varied background, and it was kind of, before we talk about how you actually got hired at Leaf Filter, I know you were in management before. So why don't you tell people kind of a brief synopsis of your sales history and your management roles that you've had?
So sales history, I started around 2007 or so. I was doing over the phone sales at a call center, raising money for different charities. I did some car sales, some power sports like jet skis, four-wheelers, car dealerships here and there. But where the page really turned was when I I left the car dealership and went to work for one of those. They sell steak and seafood out of the back of a pickup, yes. Just knocking doors down on the pavement, man. And knocking doors has, it gives you so much insight into people and how they work and what makes them tick. And a few years of that is like a, degree in psychology almost.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So,
go ahead, keep going.
Sorry.
We'll talk about the door to door though. I want to hear more.
So after that, I went to ADT as a sales rep in Denver. And then within a month or so, my boss was like, "Hey man, like you're, you got the stuff to be able to promote," which there was also, I found out, incentive to promote managers. You got a bonus for losing the money that they would make. But, he picked me. So went to Fort Worth, Texas, started in January of 2015. By June of 2015, I think I had the number one office in the country, and was promoted to regional manager. So then I had different offices. So at that point, my job was managing my office and then managing managers in other offices. And then from there, moved to Oklahoma City, got on with Leaf Filter, built that up from a $1.7 or so million office to about a $15 million office in about 3 years, I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you're a big part of it.
Correct me, go back here when you were in Dallas. When did you go to Denver? Did you mention that part?
So I was living in Denver when I was doing the door-to-door steak selling thing. I moved to Denver in 2010.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. And so one of the big things you kept kind of hammering home when you were at Leaf Filter was, as an ops manager or regional manager, when you were there with ADT, one of the reasons why you were able to stay so sharp was because you were training the people on the system over and over and over again, and like sticking to the system. Can you talk a little bit more about that before you came to Leaf Filter, and then we'll talk about the system when you were at Leaf Filter?
Absolutely, man. So there is a sales genius. There's several of them at that ADT dealer, that a Safe Haven ADT. They, Lance Combs was my branch manager, but he was also the national sales trainer. So I got really lucky there. He helped write the script for the pitch, the whole training book. I mean, the guy was just incredible. So what the company did was they sent all of their new hire managers to the office in Denver to train for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that. Yes. So I got to see the same training over and over. Now, if you were to take away, because the managers that we were training, their numbers counted towards the office numbers. But if you were to take those people away and just the regular sales reps that we were in Denver, we still would have been the number one office in the country. The number one office of the month trophy was collecting dust in the corner. It was just, and I think a big reason for that was because we're doing the basics over and over and over again. A lot of times when you see reps hit slumps, it's because they've kind of small changes over the course of time gets them so far off. And by the time you hear their pitch, you're like, what in the world? So the fact that every Monday I was brand new sales reps, every Monday, brand new branch managers to be, we were training them the basics. And then it got to where he entrusted us with training them. Delegation's a huge part of management, which we can go into. But yeah, you see what works and what doesn't. And consistently just going over the basics. I never had a chance to get rusty on my pitch because every week we were training them. So by the time I got to my own branch in Fort Worth, Texas in January of 15, it was all I knew. So just on the system and just say, look, it works. Like it's an ATM machine. Just do this, no more, no less, cash your checks, live your good life, you know?
So let's talk about, like, what do you think that got you to be promoted to manager and viewed in their eyes as management material when you were there at ADT?
Oh man. Well, I mean, obviously I could sell. I think all my years of door to door, I had no issue going door to door. I had no issues talking to strangers, which that even stretches back into my childhood, moving around so much.
Right.
New kid all the time, you know, you kind of learn
talked about
things
that.
like that. But, you know, I had drive, I had ambition, I had a lot of whys and I had goals. And if you're just kind of going through life drifting, you know, and taking what comes your way, it's not really a solid foundation to build a branch of a sales company on. You know what I mean? I think that, you know, I had places I wanted to go. I had, you know, houses I wanted to buy. Back then it was all about how much money can I make. So I knew that was a good avenue to do it. And I enjoyed it. I think when I would train somebody and show them how to do something, they're knocking doors and they can't get it. Oh, this neighborhood's no good. And then I just go bop, 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 and then boom, I'm in.
Yep.
It was all, you know, the best compliment I ever got. Oh, that was a lay down. You know, it's a compliment you can get as a trainer because it's like, well, of course it was. I made it look like a lay down.
Exactly.
So
100%.
But I think just the drive to succeed and the willingness to train. Like I did ride-alongs I didn't get paid extra for. I closed deals with people who were struggling, split it with them. You know, I kind of earned my stripes, so to speak. So that was just what we did in Denver. You know what I mean?
So let's talk about that a little bit, because you were my ops manager at Leaf Filter. I think you saw that I had a drive to succeed. I think that you saw that I was goal oriented. I think that you saw that I could sell because I was like the number one rep in your office, or, you know, challenging one, top two, you know, whatever. And be real, because like this would be a good chance to like actually get the real feedback. Because there was times when you said, well, you got to be consistent, because sometimes when I was on fire, like when I was hot, like you couldn't, when my mind was right and I was focused, nobody could get in my way. And then there was times when I wouldn't. So just be real with me. I had those things, but I still wasn't like management material in your eyes. So what was I lacking at the time?
That's a good question, man. You don't make somebody, let me see here. I guess the biggest thing was your highs were so high and your lows were so low. And there was such a gap between your highs and lows that, like, if you think about a quarterback, right? You got a quarterback. If he throws an interception, you want him to be like, well, that sucks, and just run off the field. And then it's by the same token, when he throws a touchdown, like, yes, awesome, great job, guys. Not get too high, not get too low, which is tough for anybody to do, especially type A personality, good salespeople. I think that you would have ended up getting yourself in a situation where, like, usually your best sales reps are the biggest pain in the ass. Right. Yeah. That's just kind of how it is. It's much easier from a management perspective to take somebody who's too much and tone them down versus somebody who's too timid and too little and push them up.
Yes.
I'll take
it's like pushing a bear up a tree type.
I'll take the cocky, arrogant guy who needs to tone it down 8 days a week, because that guy, you can kind of tone them down a little bit and they're killing it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a lot harder to get somebody to come up out of their comfort zone, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Great analogy.
And I thought that, you know, at the time when you and I were working together, my biggest fear is that you would get in and not be able to handle those kind of people who have those days while you're still working on your own. And you end up blowing an opportunity that, you know, because they're not just going to bring you down and next time an house opens up, re-promote you. It's like you're starting all over again. Yeah. And you're piecing it together, man, but it's kind of a slow a slow burn on this one. You know what I mean? I knew that eventually, if it was something you wanted to do, I knew eventually you could. I just think that it's a lot, man. Running an operation like Leaf Filter or even like an ADT or any sales organization, especially in home, it's a lot. It's a lot of personality management. It's a lot of schedule management, trying to keep people happy while still pushing them to get the most out of themselves, because that's ultimately what you do is you're extracting greatness. So how do I find that line between pulling greatness out of this guy and not pissing him off to the point where he doesn't want to work for me anymore? Right. And I can see that it's coming from a good place. You know, I want you to succeed. Yep. And, I didn't think that you were there yet, and then would end up losing an opportunity where, you know, now you're starting all over again. Oh, you got the management. Sales are tough to manage, man, and they all have attitudes. And I didn't want to see you fall off that cliff, man.
Well, and plus, I think you also had this, you maybe had mentioned this, that if you recommended me and I did fail, then that was going to kind of look bad on you as well. Correct?
That was probably a small part of it. For me to put my name to recommend somebody for a branch manager position, like I have to know fully, like 100% that they are at least capable of. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It happens. So like, have all those traits where I would feel comfortable. You know what I mean? You know, and I made a habit. I promoted several people from ADT as well as a few from Leaf Filter, 4 or 5, something like that. You know, so. Yeah, it's just it's a headache that I just didn't know if you were prepared to deal with yet, you know, and it was never trying to hinder you.
Yeah. So so let's go back to the highs and lows, because this is something that I actually coach people on, but I'd like to hear your perspective on it. So how do you get people to kind of modulate to where they don't get too high and they don't get too low?
Okay. So great question, by the way. When a sales rep first starts making sales their first, second, third day out, it's the biggest deal in the world. Oh my God, you're really badass. And if you can feel them getting, you know, this is just from experience, man. This is hard to learn this in a book, but like if you feel them starting to get a little too big for their britches, you can humble them in a way that doesn't piss in their Cheerios, right? When they go, hey, I just hit somebody for X amount of dollars, made this much money on this sale. Oh, that's great, man. That's great, man. I'm sweet, you know, drinks are on you, make it, you know, still celebrate their win. But at the same time, you might bring up like, you know, you didn't forget to, you know, turn your paperwork in properly or mark the right color, like you did last time, did you? It's just enough of a slight to where
like a subtle jab.
Yeah. It's like a good job slap. It's a little harder than comfortable type thing. Just to kind of, you know, and there's all kinds of little things that you can do in the moment that bring them down just enough while encouraging them. It's like a backhanded comment almost sometimes.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that. I think when you talk about me or knowing where I came from, I don't know if I had, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if I had the like I got too big for my britches problem was as big of a problem for me as it was the lows for me. Like, fuck, when I was first with you, dude, I was on antidepressants and suicidal half the time until I went to that Tony Robbins event. You know, so it's like,
tough, man, it's sales will do that to you. I don't care what you're selling. Sales will eat it out of you, man. And that's kind of why I went backwards now in my career, where it would look like I moved backwards financially and power wise, but I'm okay with it now. I've made the money. I've realized that's, you know, it's cool, but it's not everything. But yeah, it can really beat you up, man, unless your personal life is just incredibly awesome. It's tough, man. It really
and I'd like to talk about the personal life side of things too, but okay. So like, let's see, you were talking about this personality management, schedule management. Kind of give somebody who's never been, for like myself, never actually been in a position of management, like what are the, you know, the bad sides of management? Like you said, with the personality, schedule, plus you're also the filter from the upper above, right, management. You're also the filter of all the people that are trying to cancel and have complaints and stuff like that. That the reps, because if the reps saw all the shit that was going wrong in the back end, they probably wouldn't have the belief in the product to be able to sell it. So talk about the kind of ugly parts of management.
Sure, man. And that's a lot of things that people don't like to talk about as the ugly side of management, because personally, I've always tried to get to the highest level of management or highest amount of income that I could, because that's just the way I grew up. That's what my dad did growing up, and I watched him. And so I just thought that's what you do. I didn't realize that you could just say, I'm happy at this income level with this vacation schedule and et cetera, et cetera. So, I watched my dad go through it, and I kept saying, I'll never do that as I was doing that on that path. You're responsible for everything. You're responsible for the success of the branch. You're responsible for, the success of the people underneath you. You're responsible for people who aren't, at Leaf Filter, they would say, the operations side, you're not in charge of them. They don't work for you, but it's still somehow your job to make sure that there's a cohesive relationship there, whether those people are wanting it to be or not, good or bad, it's your fault. Yeah. So, in sales management specifically, man, you have to have a strong, personality, a strong mind, because hearing a lot of complaints from people constantly, whether it's customers, installers, sales reps, administrative people, it can weigh on you. We all know that, thoughts become things, and where you go, where your focus is. Yep. So hearing people don't call you to celebrate all the good things that are going. Hey, Devin, just wanted to call and let you know that install went great, smooth, no problem whatsoever. That doesn't happen, So you hear a lot of problems, things going wrong. Yeah. This happened that wasn't great. Didn't close this deal. I haven't been getting leads. You're giving so-and-so the good leads.
Would that have helped you if I would have called you and said, hey, I just knocked someone's head off, made 24%? Like, would you have heard, when I'm having a record week, like the best week I had last year was 122 out of 21 leads. I sold 17 of them and sold $122,000. Like, would that have actually helped you? Like, in your mindset, hear me every freaking, day, bam, bam, bam. I made $3,000 a day, $4,000 a day, whatever.
In that particular situation, I don't believe so, because it was so overwhelming. In general, yes, you want to hear more positive things and you want to celebrate with reps. The problem is, it's like, if you were to have called me, at least at that job, and told me about how you sold somebody and smacked them over the head and made a ton of money, had a great day, I'd be like, cool, I've got 47 other people waiting on the contract right now. Congratulations, you did your job. I hope
you did your job.
Friday. Because I got so many fires to put out. And different companies are going to be different, man. Different companies have different levels of support. Leaf Filter, there was less support from those above me, which, above me, once you have operations manager, it's just, the big dogs at that point. But at the same time, that's why I made so much money, is because it was a lot of responsibility. In Oklahoma City, they laughed at me when I said I was going to do $5 million my second year, and we ended up doing $8 million instead. Yep. So, that was a fun one. But that's why they gave us so much money, because it was your responsibility. You got to take care of all this stuff. You don't like it, like you want work-life balance. You could, go somewhere. It's just not the job here. They weren't always jerks about it, but they just let you know, like, where else are you going to go and make this kind of money? And we're like,
interesting. So as an operations, So as an ops manager, you would have just been happy if I just did my job and never called you and complained. Basically, is like, that probably would have been the ideal relationship for me to have gone along with you.
Yeah, usually those are most managers' favorite reps, because there is a crowbar of separation between like friend and coworker, especially when you're not at the same rung on the ladder, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because then me and you hang out, we have fun, we go play disc golf, then you mess up on something. I can't let the fact that we just hung out compromise the integrity of this interaction. So But usually all my favorite sales reps were the ones who just went out, were consistent, did really well, and I never had to hear from them. If there was an issue, they took care of it.
Never had problems with their paperwork.
Never had problem paperwork.
Like
never had problems with installers griping about them. Customers never complained about them. Like that's your ideal rep, and you know, that can take a while to deal with.
So in terms of that ideal rep from a manager's perspective, that's kind of also the not too high, not too low kind of mindset as well. Like you want the rep to be number one, number two, number three, whatever, up there, they're performing, but they're also not like puffing up their chest like I did when I had success.
Yeah, right? I don't mind the puffing up the chest too. It's like when they're on their lows, right? What do their lows look like? So are there lows where they just kind of go silent? Hey, I just need a few days to myself. Or are there lows like I just, flipped off a customer and told him to go F himself, because then now that becomes a liability at that point.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I feel you on that. And that's good. That's good to hear that. That's good advice, because there were times when you and I butted heads in the past, I needed that time off and I didn't realize it at the time. And I almost felt like maybe I couldn't ask for it. Mm-hmm. And so it just got to the fucking point to where I was like when COVID happened, right? Mm-hmm. It was like I had the stress of a fucking looming pandemic, right? Not knowing what the fuck was going to happen there. Yeah. Then I'm getting people talking me through their front screen door, like, I can't pitch you, I can't sell you. And then it was like all these things, and my numbers were dropping like crazy. Mm-hmm. I went from number one in the office to like 0 for 5 or some shit like that. Yeah. And then lo and behold, I thought I had the approval to sell that job up in Grand Lake, and then and we had a misunderstanding there, but it just culminated to a point to where I was like, fuck it, I got 20 grand in my bank, I'll just go ahead and blow it all up. Yeah. And thinking, I'll start my own company or whatever. And anyways,
so bringing back to your point from earlier, so when you went on, when you were up and selling, everything went great, but it didn't take much to knock you off track. And then when you went off track, you would just go, it was like you were so far down and you're like, these leads and these customers, and you get inside your own head so much and you don't sell for a while until something jerks you out of it. So from a management perspective, if that happens with an entire branch and your whole branch does that for a month, it's like, whoa, we just lost millions of dollars here because of what? And then they're going to come looking for you. And I'm like, man, they're going to crucify you. Like those guys, they were not, overly friendly. They weren't just complete jerks all the time, but there was a lot that I did. They were all about business and all about their money, and they made that very clear. And so you can either get on board with that or not. And I was on board with it for a long time, man, until I just decided to step away and didn't part ways under any bad circumstances. I got a lot of respect for the company and opportunities that I made. And man, a lot of the things they trained me on and showed me were just even my decade of sales and sales management experience. It just elevated my game to such a new level. I really don't lie.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, I didn't leave necessarily on bad terms with the company. I left on a freaking good note. When I was there, I was the last year, I was year to date, I was on pace. I was at number 7 in year-to-date income out of like 2,000 sales reps. Awesome. And when I officially left, I was number 11, but I had pretty much already kind of had one foot out the door and stopped running leads for a little bit, right? Yeah. And so that leads me to another point. So the company, I respect the company a lot. I still believe the company is like the best company and solves people's problems. Mm-hmm. But there's a couple of things that I have concerns with. And as a sales coach, like when I coach lead filter reps, I feel like my values are in alignment with the representative's values more so than the ops managers and the corporate's values. Because my big thing is my net volume per issue is at 3,400, which was pretty good. But when Adam Curry left, I think he was at 4,500. But I made more money than Adam Curry. So the company cares about the stats. And right now they're really heavy on the slugging percentage, and net volume per issue is almost number 2 now. And so if you were to judge me on my stats, I was well above average, probably in the top 10%. My volume for 433 leads when I left My volume was at like almost 1.5, is like 1.478 on 433 leads. And my income was at 252 on 433 leads. So that was like an average of like almost 690 a lead issued, right? So the income is what matters the most to the reps. And what matters the most to the company is the stats. And we kind of butted heads a little bit about this in the past too, is like, dude, I sell the most profitable jobs. A business is all about making profit, right? And you're like, nope, the company just cares about net volume per issue. I remember that weekend, I went out and sold 4 cost jobs just to kind of prove a point to myself also to get me out of that rut. So with that being said, you talked about the basics, running the basics. And what I tell people when I coach them specifically with Leaf Filter is like, look, you've got to be able to walk before you, or crawl before you walk before you run. But when it comes to a high level, to get to the top 10 in income, I don't think I got there by just doing the basics. I feel like I got there by doing something better and above to what the company was training. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think that you have to remember too, what businesses build, almost any business or every business, I guess, what they build on is implementing processes that are duplicable, right? So anybody with half of a personality can recite most company, typed out sales pitches, word for word, verbatim, and be a solid sales rep, right? The ones that go above and beyond, income wise, numbers wise, stat wise, they're putting a little bit of sauce on their pitch, adding some things, leaving some things out. And any manager in the world will tell you, if you're selling, I don't care. I've had several reps. One I know, I'm talking about. Didn't do the pitch. Didn't. Hey, you're selling. I don't care. You could go out there, do a dance, and rub the top of your head and your belly at the same time. If they're buying, keep doing it. But I'm not going to tell everybody to do that. I'm also not going to let it be common knowledge in my office that I'm allowing, right? Because but the way you talk to people you're not super acquainted with, you don't know what level of trust you have with them yet.
Right.
You just say, this is how things are done. And then you look at your buddy and you're like, that kind of side eye. Yeah, exactly. So, there were several reps throughout my career that didn't execute the company, mandated or whatever you want to call it, sales script, but they were selling it so you didn't care. What you're ultimately after is results.
So when it comes to getting promoted, the company seems like they're all about like the system. Like if you don't run the system, you're not going to be considered for promotion as well. That one rep you're talking about.
Do you know the system, and are you able to? Do you know it so well that you're able to teach the system? Because the system is what's going to get you your bread and butter. And then how many all-stars who can do kind of their own thing and go above company standard average minimums, that however many of those you can get, that's what's going to raise your numbers to the next level. So it's not a matter of do you use the system per se. It's more so, do you know the system so well that you can teach others how to do it? You can recognize where they're messing up. Should say this instead of that. Lyric. That sort of thing.
So, and that's the thing. Like, I felt like I knew the system down pat, and I used the system as like a framework and a guide to kind of generally get me there. But like, what took me above and beyond was like, in terms of mine specifically, I invested in coaches and mentors that taught me like how to take the average stuff and then tweak it with like vocal tonality, verbal pausing, changing the wording up a little bit to where you're using like neutral language rather than assumptive language that the company taught. There was things I changed about like my pre-close. I didn't do the whole plus, minus, multiply, divide and stuff like that. I did it in different steps of the process. But, so anyways, I felt like that was a little bit of a hindrance as well for getting promoted, because I didn't exactly run the exact like JP203 plus.
If you can't rattle that off to me, because every time it's a fishing story, right? Every time it's translated and passed on, it's different. So
Game of telephone.
Yeah. So if you can't nail it yourself, then if you're a little bit off, then every rep you train is going to be starting a little bit off, which they usually get it a little off from what you tell them anyways. And now you're farther from the mark.
Right.
But, I think you may have noticed, or maybe not, the last probably year or two that I was at Leaf Filter, my training, I started touching on some next level,
yes, you did.
level training tips, because at that point I had, groomed and hired and trained like my group of people.
You had a team that had been there for a while.
Yeah. And they were loyal, and they knew that I wouldn't steer them in the wrong direction. I gained their trust. And so at that point, it's like, here, I'm going to start teaching you some high level sales tips and tricks, because, I think you guys are all ready for that. You don't give steak dinner to a 6-month-old baby, so gotta make sure we're ready for it.
And it's funny because as I've been doing this coaching business for a while, I've had reps anywhere from, people that hadn't even started with Leaf Filter, but they saw that I did a podcast and I was one of the top reps at Leaf Filter. So now they want to apply there and hire me to get prepared for it. And I would teach them the system as like a boot camp before they went into their first orientation or whatever, so they'd be able to pick up on it quicker, know the pre-close before they even go into the door, and to try to help them hit the ground running so that they can bust out those first 10 leads. And then I've had other people that were already the top rep in their office. They just wanted to get a little bit better. Like I got one guy that was at 2,600 was number one in his office, and now he's pushing 3,500, 4,000. Because we had to he had the basics. Now we could take it to the next level. So anyway, okay. So we've talked enough about that. Talk about how you actually got the sales ops manager position when you weren't in the company culture to get promoted. Like at ADT, you got promoted, and normally at Leaf Filter, they promote in-house. How did you get that from the outside coming in? I know you had a little bit of a foothold with your guy in Houston, but talk about that a little bit.
So, life is not, if you hear nothing else from this whole interview, life is not about what you know, it's about who you know. When you start progressing through the ranks, you have to find a way to finesse it where you're making friends with the right people, and not in a way that makes you look like a kiss ass. I've always just been good at that because, again, I moved around. So I was a new kid every other year, 8 schools growing up. There's just a lot. So I started learning how to kind of find common ground with people and kind of go from there. I don't force anything, but I kind of just put a bunch of feelers out, make some comments about a sports game or something. Somebody bites, I'm talking to that person.
Right.
Oh, it's not just for the sake of what can they do for me, but you want to be connected, you want to have friends, you want to be well liked. And so with ADT, my buddy Will, who was in Houston, we were on regional manager business trips, and we just got along really well, man. And he had asked Luke Shearer and Jeff Block had asked him, if he had any sales reps that were ready to be in management. He was like, no, not really. But this guy I used to work with, he's just like me. He would get you the same results as I did, because he was doing really well also. So me and him both broke some records when we were at ADT. So we were kind of like always kind of friendly, competing with each other, talking smack, who's going to do more. So, him and I were on that level, and it was really nice of him to recommend. So then I got some phone calls, did some phone interviews, crushed those. And I think also Leaf Filter at the time was in such a position where they were in growth mode. They're trying to expand, and they don't have time to put somebody in a branch, continue to replace managers in a branch that's already existing, because that's energy and resources they could be putting into
growing.
Growing
new branches.
Exactly. And spending the time and the money. So I'm really good at phone interviewing. Obviously I did phone sales for several years. That's pretty well how that happened. Based mostly on the recommendation of Will Bateman, but I definitely did some phone interviews.
That's interesting. So it's interesting that you talk about growth mode, because When I went through Tony Robbins' business mastery course, it talked about the life cycle of a business very similar to the life cycle of a human. You've got your infants, you've got your teenagers, you kind of cap out up here, then you kind of hit like your midlife crisis here. And it always kind of felt, I shouldn't say always, but I could really tell that it kind of felt like Leaf Filter was kind of on the downward trend down. And part of the warning signs of that were, in my mind, was leads started getting a little tougher to get. The compensation plans started changing on management. Compensation plans finally filtered down, trickled down to the sales reps twice in the year. And that ultimately led to one of the reasons why I left. So how did you know that, how do you recognize, like, when you're going for a job interview, that it's a good company that's on the upward swing, as opposed to it's kind of peaked out or starting to go down a bit?
So great question. Great question, man. So
I told you I'm full of them.
So you can, when you're going to interview with a company, where is the interview taking place? There's nothing wrong with interviewing somebody at Starbucks. But if your company's not in growth mode, you're an established, well-known, company. You probably have an office that I'm coming into, and there's a secretary going to greet.
Sure.
Right. Also, the size of companies. A lot of times people will talk about their growth. If you're going to tell me Leaf Filter, for example, it's a fast-growing company, but there's already 226 branches. Like, how many more places can you sell gutter protection?
Yeah. Exactly.
So when you can, obviously the size and of the locations, how many sales reps do you have? We got 4. Okay. You're a roofing company. You have 4 sales reps. You're obviously trying to grow this thing. That's a good time to get in because, from the stake selling days, my manager, we had talked about promotions and things like that, how that all worked. I had no drive then. I was just trying to work a couple of days and snowboard the rest, man.
Yep.
But it came up a conversation. He was like, well, here, eventually, like, I'll send somebody out with you and you can train them. You can show them how to do this. No structure whatsoever. It was just like, load your truck up, pay for what you don't come back with. But he was like, if you train this guy and then you train this guy, all of a sudden, you come in, who trained that guy? Well, Devin did. Well, who trained that guy? Well, Devin did. Well, I'll be damned. Devin's trained half this office anyways. Let's give him his own. He can train everybody. You make it obvious that you're the one for the job. But kind of went sideways on that one.
I've got maybe 2 more questions for you if you got time for it.
I got all the time in the world, man.
Perfect. All right. So before I forget, so let me just write this one down. Consistency. Okay. As now you're currently a rep. You used to be a manager, a badass manager at that. You've been a badass sales rep. Now you're kind of like knocked down to back to, quote, just a rep. As a rep now, working with a manager, how's that relationship between you and the manager now?
Our relationship is great. It is hard to bite my tongue because you don't get to be in a position, of a manager or a regional manager or whatever the title is without having I like the way that I do it, type A, I'm right mentality. It's advantageous in a lot of ways, and it also could be a detriment here and there. As far as him and I's relationship, it's great because I set the tone from the interview, just like every manager always should with every interview they conduct. I set the tone from the interview. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's kind of where I'm at in life. This is why I'm here. This is what I'm looking to do. To truly see if this company and me are a good fit. And from the interview, we were on the same page. He's really worked with me with my schedule in a lot of ways. They didn't have to. And, when you're in sales management for 15 years, like I was, you kind of can get a good read on people right off the bat. And I could get a good feeling off the guy right off the bat in the interview that he was a guy that I would like to work for. I enjoy being just a sales rep because I have so much more peace than I used to. I handled it fine for the first few years, but as the years got on, it just kind of wore on me. And everybody's got a timeline a burnout date that if you continue doing certain things, especially sales management, it's hard to be, like a branch manager for a sales organization like Leaf Filter or ADT or the stake thing for, 30, 40 years. Right. That would be a tough ask,
I get it, and it was no disrespect to you as far as being just a
no. I like saying it too because, like, well, man, if you want to try and train some people, you can make a team lead, or we're opening up branches here. I need somebody in Nashville. I'm like, absolutely not. I want to go to my appointments. I want to go home.
That's interesting.
I've been to the mountaintop and no one camps there. You know what I mean? Everyone camps down below at the bottom.
Good. That's a great line. I like that a lot. I like that.
I was thinking about this the other day because like when you're at the top of the mountain, right, you're like positioning yourself above everybody. So everybody's either coming for you, hating on you, talking smack about you, wishing that they had your job. A few of them genuinely want to learn from me, and that's what I did with Comes in Denver. I just was like, pour every piece of knowledge you have into me, even though we butted heads like you and I did, but in a good way. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but man, it's fun to be at the bottom of the mountain where everybody's camping, having fun, enjoying what they have, and enjoying their time together. Have a lot more peace. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with either. Right. Yeah. I've been here. It was fun. And now I want to stay down here for the rest of my time and just camp out.
But I think you got a good point, though, because it's like, for example, I forget who told me this, but there was like a story of some guys that wanted to climb to the top of Mount Everest, and they took off like a week or two or whatever. They bought all their stuff. They hired the Sherpa and all that stuff, and they're at base camp. And then the Sherpa's like, "Hey guys, we don't have very much time because a storm's blowing in, and if we go, we won't have enough time to get all the way back up to the peak and back to base camp in time before the storm blows in. So we're not going to be able to climb and get to the top." And they're like, "What the fuck? We just spent all this money. We took all this time off. We're here. We're 5 feet from gold," right? Analogy. I know you know that one. Yeah. And it's like, you're telling me we came all this way? No, fuck that. We're going. And then they go to the top, and then the storm blows in and they die at the top of the mountain. And it's like, you can be safe at base camp. You go up, you visit for a time, and you come back. But that's a great analogy. I like that.
And I tell you, a lot of people are not ready for that level of success and that level of income. The doors that open to you when you start making that $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year number, you start meeting people and having access to places and things and people that a lot of the world will never see. And not all of it's good. There's a lot of bad out there, a lot of things that are good that you can let get a hold of you and drag you down. Ultimately, myself, I think that I always wanted that level of success, but I don't like what that level of success did to me. I don't like my character. Things have happened to me in my life that are not fair or right and just, but that's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern was the person that I had become on the way to the top of the mountain. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like what the success did to me. I don't like the character that I had at that. So I think, I had to humble myself, and the Lord humbled me a little bit himself as well. But, it's like, I remember I used to ask you, well, why do you want to be in management? Is it because you want the status? Do you want the money? Do you want to just be able to say, I helped 15 people make $100,000? Like, what do you really want in here? Because it's tough. And if it's the money, man, money is such a slippery slope.
It's interesting.
We all think we won't change when we get that money until we get that money. And then it's like, oh boy.
It's interesting. In years past, it was the money, right? It also was the experience of it's like, well, I don't want to have to be driving till 11 o'clock at night running a lead, as an example. I want to be home. I can take a call from home. I can issue leads from home. It seems like behind this, not looking behind the scenes, but it seems on the surface that it looks like it's a little more of a cush lifestyle, even though you might laugh because you're like, dude, my phone was blowing up this many times and all this stuff, right? But to me, it seemed like it was a different kind of pressure, but it felt like that was what I saw at first. Then I started seeing the income where I was on pace to make 340 going into the fall. I might have hit 4 before they changed the comp plan. And if I would have stayed there and had my head screwed on straight like it was, and then, so it wasn't necessarily about the money at that point. At that point, it really, truly was like, I wanted to be able to pay it forward to other reps to where it's like, dude, I went from $100,000 to being on pace to do $300,000 or $400,000. I want to help other people do that. Cause like, that's why we're on the call right here, because I wouldn't be in the position I'm in today if it weren't for you. So like, I want to be able to pay that forward to other people. And I felt like that would have been the most like satisfying part of the job. But I think looking on the outside, looking in at this point with the ops managers I've talked to, it seems like that is like 10% of the job. What would you say?
90 was
fucking phone calls and this and putting out fires and all the all the shit that nobody wants to do.
I'll give you a good example, man. So when I was in the hospital and I had cancer, I just got out of surgery. I had diverticulitis. They cut out.
That was a crazy story. Yeah,
my kidney, cut me from. It was just bad. Staples, the whole night. Took a kidney out, took the colon out. They wheel me in. And I'm just like, there's a video. I was like, I'm in so much pain. Help me, please. They're like, well, we can't give you any more pain meds. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. What is happening right now? Yeah. And so my mom was like, this is crazy. My mom's one in backwoods Arkansas. Like she'll swing on a nurse for real. My mom comes marching down the hall. Hey, something's not right, blah, blah, blah. So they get the charge nurse in there and find out that both of the veins, both of the IVs in my arm, they had blown the veins out. So none of the medicine was getting to me. So I got whole surgery and the staples and everything raw. Now I was kind of speaking kind of slurred words, but that was from the anesthesia that hadn't worn off yet. They thought it was a pain medication.
Yeah.
So it was some of the worst pain I'd ever felt. And I say that story because I think most of the people that come into my room at that particular hospital, they probably got into healthcare for the right reasons, but eventually you take so many blood pressures, put so many IVs in, you change this, you do that. Now it's just a job. Now, instead of wanting to help people and care for people who can't care for themselves, like I got to hurry up and do this so I can get back and finish my show or my lunch, or sooner I can do this, I can take a nap. And then it kind of fades away the real reason why they got into it. So at Leaf Filter, it was kind of the same thing for me personally. I can't speak for the company or the managers, but it just like, it was more about money. And then my personal life, you got to remember what you did that got you there. And a lot of times once we get there, we stop doing the things that got us there. And that was kind of what happened to me, man. I just started treating people like they were just beneath me. You know what I mean? It was one of the worst periods of my life because of the way that I treated people that were close to me, people that were friends, people that were employees. Used to, I'd stay up on the phone again until midnight talking to a sales rep about how to overcome objections. If that's what it took, because I knew he was going to be loyal to me. But man, years and years and years and years and years of doing that. I mean, a 3-hour phone call with a sales rep. My wife's over here, the baby, wondering when she's, so I couldn't manage it. I couldn't balance it,
That's interesting. Yeah, I appreciate that. And so going back to I think you had made a comment that you didn't like how it had turned you. Like, I feel like there's a point where I've kind of gotten with my sales, and now as like a coach, and I'm like, I started to have a little success as a coach, and then I started to get like a little bit of a big head there. And then and I hired coaches that I tried to be like, because I saw somehow how they acted. So like when I saw you, I was like kind of trying to take on a little bit of your personality, or at least what I saw. And maybe it wasn't the best side of you. So talk to me about the parts that changed that you didn't like.
That I didn't like?
Yes.
Oh man. With that level of income, it's hard not to, I probably spent like $1,200 a month in Starbucks because everybody at the office got a sandwich and a coffee like every morning, donuts and stuff on the meeting days for the sales reps.
You did that out of your pocket, out of your kindness of your heart. There
was no expense fund, for Starbucks. No,
so why'd you do that? Because you didn't have to do that.
Man, they would always say how we're not in charge of the office, like the install and admin don't work for you, but you're still the leader in the office. And just because I'm not in charge of them, company structure wise, doesn't mean that I'm not still the leader in the office.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just creating a good office environment, man.
And that's the part you didn't like?
No, I was just saying how I used to spend that money on that to get a good office environment, but then I would start using it against them. Hey, I'm spending $300 a week on freaking coffee for you. The least you could do is let me know when a customer calls in to cancel or something along that fact.
I see. So you were giving it, but then you were leveraging it against them.
Yeah, and that's not why you're supposed to. That's not what I should have done. I should have done it because I wanted to create a good work environment, which I did.
Right.
I would always keep that in my back pocket,
Yeah. Interesting.
That's not good. And then obviously,
that's not what I thought you were going to say, honestly.
Well, there's a lot more that, the fact that I, was the most successful person in my family. My uncle makes, about $85,000 a year. His life is great. He gets 5 weeks of vacation, but I would, my dad was the most successful person, so I wanted to outdo him. And, I would let people know that I was the most successful. I would try, funny to flaunt my money, buying big Christmas presents and, offering my ex-wife way more money than I would have, been forced to pay. Just stuff like that, pulling up in my truck, looking down my nose at people. I'm country club memberships. If I wanted a courtside seat, $3,000 for 2 tickets, it was nothing. You know what I mean? That makes you think that you're better than people just because you make more money than them. For me, it was not good. I was it made me too arrogant, it made me too cocky. And, just like the way that I would talk to people like they didn't matter. It was awful, man. It was awful. I would get mad at sales reps. Well, you're replaceable because I got all these people.
Right. Now that's more along the lines of what I thought you were going to go.
Oh man, no, it was the worst. It was the worst side of me, man. I hope that guy is gone forever. And I think he is because of, just life experience. But that was not that. And also it's easy to get lazy when you get to that level of success. You just think that a lot of times things do run on autopilot once you create a good environment. A lot of sales reps, it basically runs itself, right? But when it doesn't, and I have to get involved and do actual work, I've got so cushy and comfortable because it's been running itself for 2 months. Now it's, it's December, things are falling apart and I'm trying to duck hunt, kind of put into that. So
I appreciate the honesty and the transparency with it, man. All right. So I think I'm going to leave you kind of on a little bit of I'll say 2 more questions.
Sure.
So going back to like the consistency towards the end, like I felt like I was really starting to get my groove, right? With the investments that I made in myself, I was starting to I saw myself as competing with Adam. And I remembered you saying when we kind of butted heads on that New Year's Eve, about not turning in my goal paperwork on time or whatever. And I was telling you, I was like, I want to do like 275, 300, something like that this year. And you're like, you really think you can compete with Adam? I was like, fuck yeah. Like you said it in a voice like very dismissive, like. You really think you can compete with Adam?
No, I knew exactly what I was doing.
That's funny you saying that because I didn't fucking take it that way. And I was like, yeah, motherfucker. I sold 140. I made 143 in 7 months, and I was out for a fucking month with this, surgery I had. And I was easing back into it. So I was prorated for 280. So yeah, I think I can compete with him. And you're just like, okay, and now granted, had you stayed the ops manager, I don't know if I would have competed with him. When the new ops manager came in, he was funneling fucking so many leads my way. I was running 4, 5, 6 leads a day sometimes. And he felt like one of the reasons he felt like he could have made the office more money by feeding reps like me 4 or 5 reps a day or 4 or 5 leads a day. When you had the approach, you tried to not give 4, 5, 6 leads a day. So I kind of went on a couple of different tangents there. But you were all about the consistency thing, and I felt like I had started to get the consistency, but I still wasn't ready in your eyes.
So, well, as far as the making more money thing, so I personally didn't like to overload people because I can have a horse sprint at full sprint for 500 yards, or I can have him trot for 10 miles. You know what I mean? I think that someone like you, when we were talking about when your lows were low, I get you on a bad day and you go over 5, whereas I could have given you 2, and then this guy 2, and then this guy 1. Plus, when you're only feeding a handful of reps and you've got 15, 20, working for you, and there's only 5, 6 guys getting leads, eventually they're going to lead. Hey, well then fine, you can run, all your leads off of that. It's tough. It's such a balancing game, and no one's ever going to get it right and perfect. But I think that, yeah, you did get consistent. But you're the kind of guy that you can say something like, you really think so? And it'll push you to do better. Whereas some people you could say that to, and they'll go inward. You know what I mean? You were a military guy. You probably saw guys in basic training. They get yelled at. Some of them fires them up. Some of them it scares them. You know what I mean? People are going to react differently. And that's kind of an unteachable. That's kind of an experience thing. You either got it or don't, or you're going to develop it through years of experience of dealing with people. But being able to tell the difference. Yeah. You can't. You're going to not push the guy who would take it as a get fired up moment. He's going to underperform for you. And the guy who, is scared to get yelled at, he's going to just quit.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I just kind of take a very, almost like a military, type of approach. And I guess it really is with some people. Like I just had a guy I was coaching where he was a little bit older and he was kind of being a little bitch. So like I had to kind of like really, I felt like I had to rip into him, and I felt like he could take it. But it was like, it was like a pattern interrupt, because he would get in these woe is me patterns. And it was like, I had to fucking like lay into him to get out of this self-pity mode. Yeah. But anyway, all right. Last thing I want to ask is this. What are your goals now moving forward? Because I feel like for you, like it's my hallucination that you're probably going to spend a little bit of time recouping and like licking your wounds in a way, and like biding your time until once everything is kind of behind you and you've kind of moved on, and then it's going to be, I don't know if just making, low 6 figures is really going to, that you're capable of doing more than that. There's a point of balance. What's the next 5 years look for Devin? What does it look like?
Good question.
Is it making $1 million and then going to Arkansas and hunting every day, or or what is it?
No, my goal is to build a life that I don't need a break from. What I mean by that is I can run leads as a sales rep, and I could start. I've been looking at starting a hydro seeding business for a few months, still doing research and cost analysis and stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways to make money, but my personal goals now don't involve money, and that's such a weird shift for me because my whole life has been about that. I've learned to look at how I can easily live on less than we all can, right? Do you need 12 pairs of blue jeans, or do you need 4? Do you need 22 dress shirts? Do you need 5? Things like that. I ended up having, I was glued to my phone, and I think that just didn't allow me to be where my feet were. And so, I'm going to stay in roofing. I like roofing. It's, a lot of times it's when you're dealing with insurance money. Sometimes you're dealing with obviously them paying deductibles or what kind of policy they have. I'd like to get into commercial roofing because I know there's, it's a lot. It's really profitable. You don't sell as many of them, but the ones you do sell, you make pretty good coin on. I'd like to get into that. But ultimately my focus has shifted to, just creating a life for myself and my kids that we can look back and be proud on. Financially, once you get to the level that guys like you and I have been to, where you're making this much money, making 150 grand a year is a joke.
Right. Exactly.
It's so effortless because it's just what we've done that, I'm getting a late start on this year. I kind of took a few weeks to Arkansas to kind of get my head right. Fishing a lot. I could still clobber 150 by the end of the year, and it's not even challenging.
And in Oklahoma, 150 goes pretty far, or Arkansas or whatever. So here's the thing. When I left Leaf Filter, I told myself 2 stories, and I don't know which one is which yet. One was, there's Tony Robbins talks about how if you want to master any skill, there's basically 3 things you need to do for mastery. Number 1 is hire someone who's actually achieved what you want to achieve and like get close to them, learn from them. And, you know, because if they've done what you've done, then, you know, if I want to be a bodybuilder, I don't hire a fat personal trainer or even a mediocre personal trainer. I hire somebody that's competed at shows and won, right? So that's number one. I thought to myself, I was like, well, have I had that level of success? Because I was comparing myself to people in different industries. In Leaf Filter, you know, I was in the top like 1/3 of 1%. So I was like, okay, yeah, I have had outstanding results. So I could check that box. Number two, totally immerse yourself in their content or training. When I've hired coaches and bought training courses, that's what I did. Like I would go to sleep listening to it. I would listen to it when I'm waking up and taking showers, when I'm in the car riding. Totally immerse yourself in. Okay, check, done that. I could come up with the sales course, you know, and sell that. Number three was spaced repetition over time. Repetition was the mother of all learning. It's just taking enough reps over a long enough period of time to where it finally fucking clicks. And I was like, okay, I could build a sales course around this. And there's 200 plus offices around the country. Surely if I went to every single office, there's at least one rep in every office who's like me, who would be willing to pay 5, 10, 20 grand to be able to make an extra 50, 100 grand a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and we talked about this for a while. We were like, dude, we could do this, right? So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to actually do it. And then I said, you know, I'm never going to make, especially with this comp plan change, I'm never going to make $1 million at Leaf Filter, or maybe I could if I ran 6 leads a day and knocked everybody's heads off. But like, was that realistic? No. But surely I could find one person in each office, 200 offices at $5K each. That's $1 million. So I was like, okay, number one, that's at least like the low level potential of what I could as the next goal. Number two story I told myself was, if I could just make half of what I was making at Leaf Filter, but have complete control over my schedule, I'd be happy. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I've had a couple 10, 15 grand months. I've had one 20 grand month. This month, I'm pretty sure with this new beta launch I'm doing, I'll probably hit 40K in the next like 10 days. And so before the end of the month, maybe 40K. But then I realize I'm surrounding myself with people that make 50 to 100 grand a month as clockwork. Like you're talking about 150 a year. And I'm realizing that I am not living up to my potential. And it's making me get back to the thinking of, making 150 grand a year almost sounds like poverty.
Remember when I used to tell everybody in the office, I'm going to get out of bed for less than 250.
Right? Yeah, seriously. And I'm at that, but it's like, because here's why, because like my monthly bills are probably close to 6 to 8 grand with all the coaching and stuff I'm paying for. And it was before more than that, to where like, if I only make 10 grand in a month, I'm like, fuck, what happens if I make 8 grand next month or 10 grand next month? Like, I'm going to be broke. And it's like, you need to go start stacking some 30, 40, 50K months to put some money back in the bank so you can pay these credit cards off and feel comfortable again. So that's why I'm wondering about where you're really going to be. Cause like, while you're at this point right now, I know you're capable of so much more. And I wonder if it's just who you're surrounding yourself with. Are you surrounding yourself with good quality people that make the $1 million a year, or you surround yourself with the wrong quality people that make that $1 million a year, or vice versa, good quality people that make 150, 200 grand a year, and now that's your like who you're surrounding yourself with?
So I've got a group of guys that I meet with on every Tuesday. The group's called Feed the Good Wolf. You know, you got to. We all heard that story.
Yep.
And they're great, and they're hyper successful people. Not all in the sales industry necessarily, but some are surgeons, some are working with energy companies, oil companies, ranchers, guys that are pretty successful.
Salt of the earth kind of guys.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's guys that a few that maybe aren't on that income level wise. But it's funny because my Frisbee golf group, most of those guys, I don't want to make assumptions. I mean, most of those guys are not making 6 figures for sure. Most of them. There might be a couple that are, but for sure most of them are. And it's kind of giving me a fun side of life, because seeing how much fun and how much joy that they have on a daily basis when they have far less than and never had the level of success that I have. It's good to have that too. It's good to have balance. I think that, I heard a guy say one time, he talked about, when you talk about where you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, 20, whatever you're looking at, work your way backwards. So like, where are you? I'm on a beach in Mexico, Margarita. I'm like, okay, how did you get there? I flew. Who are you there with? I'm with my wife and 2 kids. Okay, how long have you guys been together? Where'd you meet your wife? And you start working your way backwards from your end point, and it kind of helps you basically just work that to where you are now and develop a plan that way. I'm not saying it's the way to develop a plan, but it's a lot of times we work our way. Okay, if I work real hard, I can get promoted to this position. Then we try to project forward. Instead, find your end goal, work your way backwards. How did you get there? Who are you there with? How did you?
Interesting. So what I'm working on right now is, I forget what the name of it is. I forget, there's a term for it, but who Charlie Munger is? He's partners with Warren Buffett.
Oh, so he's probably important.
Charlie Munger, right? I think him and Warren Buffett are like, if anything, maybe he's. Yeah. So he has a concept. I forget what it's called, but it's basically like, what do I not do? Like when he went deployed for like World War I, like old school, like, I'll make it home if I just don't die. Like, and it's almost like, what are the things you have to avoid doing, and that's kind of where I'm living my life at this point right now, is I'm trying to figure out the things that I need to cut out of my life and eliminate from my life. Like, for example, doom scrolling on social media as an example, right?
Think about that.
If I spend,
you can translate that over to an athletic. There are we say, I think the best athlete that's ever walked the face of the planet is Bo Jackson. I think Deion Sanders is a close second. We have these freak athletes, but there's probably been athletes that were even way better, substantially better than both of those, but we never heard about them because they couldn't get their grades right, or they couldn't, stand for with the law. They couldn't, for whatever reason.
That movie, The GOAT. Remember The GOAT?
Yeah. There's lots of people out there who have the same potential as you and I to do the things that we've done, but they don't. And why? So, if you're talking about what don't I do? Well, look at the most successful. The reason that I've been as successful in the past as I have is really simple. I find the manager or the number one sales rep in every office I've ever been, and I just bug them with questions. I watch meticulously. My brain just notices everything they do, the tone that they speak with, the rate at which they speak, highs and lows, hand gestures, body language, how they dress, everything. And I take it all in. And I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yes.
Now you're 100%. Not some name on a list in Sacramento. Now you're like a guy next to me that I'm watching you do your thing. And I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can sure do that. And then now I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it better than you. And competition always breeds excellence. You'll get the best out of everybody if there's some competitiveness in there. And that's what's really been my biggest, helping hand, is just watching the big dogs. What do they do? What do they not do? Lance Combs, he would never waste time begging somebody to let him sell them a security system. You've never even thought about it. You just bought the house, hadn't even crossed your mind. Cool, have a good day. We're not for you. No problem. He didn't waste time with people that weren't putting money in his pocket. He would, we've thought about it, but we got all these other things to do. Okay, the fact that they thought about it before he showed up meant like, we got some room, spending time with people that are making you money.
So I like what you said about like finding the people. So I always tried to gravitate. Like when I came back to the office, I did that with Adam Curry. Like I reached out to him. I was like, dude, not only are you the top rep in the office, but I see how you interact, and I like your humility and everything. You seem like a down to earth guy. I'd like to foster a friendship with you, and just kind of, if there's anything I could do for it to help you, so it's not just a take, let me know. And I regret that the time we worked together, we didn't spend more time talking. He did help me just a few times. We did talk, but I did do that. And so I appreciate it.